Music is fundamentally an emotional connection.
Doesn't matter where you're from in the world, what language you speak, music, we all speak that same language.
I believe that music gives us an opportunity to tap into something greater and to connect people.
The music industry is kind of like a giant vacuum now, and I think in order for art to thrive, you need a community.
Work at something and then hopefully meet the right person that can make it a little easier on you to make things happen.
Like an organization like Launch, which is finding these people, not only the musicians and the artists, but the people working on the back end of things who are also musicians and artists themselves, so they understand sort of the struggles we have to get together to help other artists. Because that's what every artist and musician needs. They need a team. You hear it with everyone, like, unanimously.
All right, guys, welcome everyone to the Ropeadope Music and Arts Festival. I'm one of your hosts today, Fabian Brown, and as the mission continues to support artists, during this crazy time, over the next couple of days, over the next 2 days, the Ropeadope community is coming together, and we're going to be putting together conversations with Ropeadope cats. We're going to be doing live sets. We're going to be doing special video premieres, and this is a shout out to launchglobal.tv. They're the cats behind the scenes that's putting this platform together. We have some serious veterans that position to really take over the live stream to support artists and independent artists here in the industry. This festival also is coinciding with Bandcamp Day, giving fans and artists a further way to connect and collaborate and support independent musicians. And over these 2 days, guys, I'm looking at the lineup here. It is pretty serious. And before I hand it over to Louis Marks and our special guest, let me just go over some things that we're going to be watching. For today, as an example, we're going to be diving in with David Wurtzel, revealing the story behind the iconic Ropeadope brand and t-shirt. I'm so excited about that. We have some video premieres coming up from Sasha Masakowski, from David Whitman, from Jason Miles. A little bit later on, we're going to have Ali Harveen coming on. We have Max Besessin, Malumbo with Paige Hamilton. And then we're going to close out today with a DJ set from the one and only DJ Logic coming up at 6 o'clock. So you guys want to make sure you're hanging around for that. And then I'll give you the recap of what's coming up for tomorrow's show. But I have the honor and I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Louis Marks, who's been at the helm of Ropeadope for over a decade, propelling and pushing this brand forward. Louis, can you hear me okay?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I got you.
All right. It's good to be here virtually from a remote location, but I missed the Ropeadope room. This is my fake Ropeadope room here at home. Fabian Brown, thank you. Our first guest gets that fake reference, and I want to talk about this cat. Gosh, it's about 20 years ago, somebody walked into my office and said, I have this clothing brand and it's also a record label, and we want to do a new thing called web stores, and we want somebody to print. I need somebody to print t-shirts. I need somebody to do labels. I need somebody to do this, to do that. And I just looked and said, okay, We'll do that. And that's how I started with Ropeadope. You know, it's 2020, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't look back at the Ropeadope clothing line. And I pull those designs out, and they're just as fresh as they were the day they were printed. And there's been a lot of work going on at Ropeadope around music, and I do regret that we don't do as much with clothing anymore. But this cat, David Wurtzel, his eye, his attention to detail, his meticulous attention to detail when we were working together was amazing. But he also, and I was talking to Logic the other day. He said, David always built a story. So you can't really look at Ropeadope as a brand musically or in apparel without that input, that beginning input of you have to tell a story. And what's amazing is the stories are about things that are so relevant and so poignant today. Icons, the Mexico City imagery, the American Immigrant Collection, the City series, the Worldwide Respect series, it goes on and on. All of this come from David Wurtzel. But the last thing I want to say, there's plenty more to his life. He's intertwined business and social good consistently, both at Ropeadope with the clothing line, but further in the First 20, which helped firefighters with fitness issues. And now his new project we're going to talk about today is the Road to Resilience. And I have as many questions as you do. So David Wurtzel, AKA Words, it's good to see you, brother. It's been a while.
Wow. Good to see you. I want to keep going that in. I mean, you were bringing me back and all this stuff. And first of all, thank you. I want you to have you do all my introductions going forward wherever I go. You kind of forget about what you do. For me, it was when we, truth be told, Lewis and I interfaced about a couple of weeks ago because I'm actually starting to write a book. And everybody's like, you got to have a book these days. So I started going backwards to go forwards and really looking at some of these areas of my life. And Ropeadope is really, for me, is that inflection point where all these things came together. And the only thing I will correct is I might have had the idea, and Fabi and I were just discussing this before you got on, where, hey, like maybe we do this thing, but it was a sheer collective in what made this function. And I think that's what makes it so vital today is it wasn't, maybe I have an idea and Lewis Marks was like, oh, that's your idea. Like you're going to go toilet paper Fabian's house, but why don't you go through the backyard? I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. I never thought about that. So everybody layered on ideas and sometimes like made the whole thing change. So there's the idea of a journey. Like you don't know what you're going to find on the journey. You know what you're going to do with what you're going to find. But ultimately for me in Ropeadope, I didn't know what Ropeadope was going to do to me. So I was fundamentally changed by the Lewis Markses, the DJ Logics, the Andrew Cunninghams, and all these folks that were endemic in making the brand come to life. So thanks for letting me come out here and like kind of tell some of that story. Yeah, it's great. I mean, we do put on the website, like we kind of follow Ropeadope wherever it may lead. And it is about collaboration for Andrew and Nate Silver and all the other cats. But Nate, Yeah. So we kind of touched on how it started, but let's go back to the beginning. Why a clothing line in the first place? How did that begin? Well, I always start with long ago, I discovered like how people define themselves is the music they listen to, the clothes they wear, and the communities they live in. And that holds true no matter where I go. And I remember talking and working in the military. I was in a bunch of guys working in the Air Force. I'm like, oh, that's silly. I'm like, wait, you all went to some country music show last night. They're like, oh yeah, we saw whoever it was. You all look the same and you're all hanging out together. You're all dressed the same. Like they're like, wait a minute, there's something to that. So you start with this idea that this is how we express ourselves. And if I go back to it, probably somewhere in the early 90s, what started to happen was these ideas existed. Well, this is part of how we do it. From a branded perspective, none of those were housed under one roof. And I think it was Tommy Hilfiger went from being this brand that like all these preppy white dudes wore to like this urban street brand. Mm-hmm. And what happened, I think it was, again, I'm going to go back early 90s, and Fabian, somebody fact check me on this stuff, is it
Fact
was like,
checking is over. We don't do that.
no, right, I know. Yeah, just not even, please. So it was, I think Raekwon from Wu-Tang, I think the Brand Nubians, who is that guy, Brand Nubians? Grand Poobah. Grand Poobah, the founder of the Brand Nubians, they started wearing Tommy Hilfiger. So Hilfiger was like solid. And actually Poobah, now it's coming back. So Mary J. Blige dropped her record. It's called What's the 411? That's her first record that came out 93, 92. Poobah put a line on it about wearing Hilfiger. So boom, this brand like exploded, and it went from like you saw it on the rack at Marshalls to like now it was like a coolest, freshest thing going, but it was all fake and phony. There wasn't real behind it. And at the time, through happenstance, I was helping a friend of mine, a photographer, who was taking some pictures, and I'm like, putting them on shirts, and happened to have a band. I was like, yeah, it's like music and clothes, kinda. But along came Ropeadope. So when the music came out and Ropeadope Music broke, and Andy, and those guys had the idea for like really, what still today is this groundbreaking label that's going to push the envelope in all different directions. It's like the Duke Ellington. There's only two kinds of music: good music and bad music, right? Ropeadope is like, that's it. So we wanted to, like, wow, this would be the perfect spot to have a reflection of that in the clothing that push those boundaries, all that express like how we all live, that express that in a different way. So that was really the inception point for Ropeadope, that idea of real music, real clothes, real ideas.
So you started at some point to kind of group those, to make a collection. And
yes,
you picked certain images. I mean, did you have the concept first of like, I'm going to do a line of the icons of music, Nina Simone, John Lee Hooker, or did that happen? Did the collection happen after you picked certain things? Like, how did you get to that concept of like classics?
Well, I kind of like, this I think is really why Ropeadope is so successful. It's an organic path. Like, what do I travel around? Like what influences me? I'm always what books, what music, and what I realize is I draw my influences from sports, from politics, from music, and I think for most of us we have these things, these ideas that define us. But like music, nobody's listening to just one genre of music anymore. Everyone listens to so much. So, and again on the clothing, it was, hey, who influences us? And then that process was like putting it out there in the collection. Everybody's like, hey, how about Gandhi? It was like, Gandhi, dude, you got to do King Tubby. I'm like, oh my God, King Tubby. So then it became this, everyone had their people, all the designers, and we all came together. And that's how that started, was we all came with like, okay, is somebody not represented at the table? Are we missing some segment of society? Dude, Pele. I'm like, Pele. We got to get Pele into the mix. So that's how that manifests. It's
interesting because in retrospect, what was happening in the internet at that time, or has happened since, is that people have forgotten who the heroes are.
Yeah.
Like, you're putting these people up, you're kind of preserving history in a fashion sense at a time when people are just getting lost in a sea of information, and you fast forward 10 years and people are like, saying that Paul McCartney owes Kanye a debt for breaking him. You know what I mean? Like, that's how disconnected people got,
Yeah.
So you got your icons, then you move on to social issues.
So we move on to, I think the big deal in Ropeadope was, it's not what you look at, it's what you see. I think Bob Marley kind of expressed it. He said, some people dance in the rain, some people just get wet. So how are you going to experience the world around you? Do I see Lewis as a white guy, or do I see, this person as a female, or old, young? It's like we smash into each other's pieces of each other. I think we only see pieces. And the idea was, how do we go just beneath the surface for the real story here? Like, how do we start seeing the world around us and pulling in images and other things that allow us to see it all differently and maybe in a more authentic way? And that's okay, right? I always feel like it's okay to see the bumps and the bruises and the imperfections, because I was like that perfectionist guy, but that's who we are. And so I think that's where we ended up going was, as we kind of got into these social issues, is like, what's this thing called America? That's, America's a potentiality. It's not an actuality. We're always kind of getting there. And who makes America work? How's it work? And where does it fall short? So my favorite image on the American Immigrant series, maybe jumping ahead too far, but
no, go ahead.
Was the Statue of Liberty, like panhandling. That one where that one was like, I think, my favorite, because it's this idea we want to see America as right there. It is. I want that one back. So I got a lot of grief wearing that. Like, whoa, man, how could you see it that way? How do you see America that way?
This is the perfect example. If somebody looks at that shirt today, they're not going to ask you that question.
Right.
Right. You are 15 years ahead of what's happening, because you're seeing the disconnect in American culture and the problems. And now people are waking up and going, oh, wow.
Right.
I thought this was the shiny city on a hill. No, there's the Statue of Liberty is actually homeless and panhandling at this point.
Homeless and panhandling. Yeah. So it's that. Yeah. And it's really interesting. So what is the American dream? What's the gap between where we are to that space? I think it was somebody like Kierkegaard said, I judge a society by the problems they're trying to solve. So I'm like, where I'm a little hopeful is like, we're trying to solve, how do we get rid of Donald Trump? I'm sorry, I'm putting it out there that way, but we're looking at issues that I think it's not what makes us bad. It's like, we're trying to make, how does everyone rise in the society, and where are these inequities at? And maybe it's time to see it differently. The Howard's in the wrong people are in jail and the wrong people are out of jail. The wrong people are in power and the wrong people are out of power. How do we turn that around? I think that's an ongoing question. We were at least asking, I think, the right questions or digging in the right area back when we were coming up with those clothes.
100%. I'm curious, and I don't think I've ever really kind of asked you this personally, but now that, we're all a little older, and I have some retrospect, like, how did you personally come to this? Because it speaks to what you're doing now. I want to talk about that next, but you strike me. It's interesting. I didn't notice this commonality between us, but you speak and you talk about concepts as if you were a seasoned intellectual, and yet you're hanging down at the fire department,
right?
With the union guys or at the military, right? So how do you bridge those worlds? How did you come to that? How, like, life study? It just happened to you?
Yeah, it's funny. It's the Lewis Marches happened to me. So it's listening to someone else's story. When you maybe taking this step into like what I discovered in our work is, how our brain's designed to work and what's going on. So we have experiences happen around us that we don't control, and our subconscious is making value assessments all the time that might not be in our best interest. Based on, what we don't realize is we see ourselves as separate, but we're not. And what happens is, so when we're born, a young child, their brain develops, like in the mom, they don't see themselves different as the mother. Our brains are not designed to be separate. We're highly socialized brains. Our brains exist within other brains within a set. There's a concept in neurobiology. It's neurons neighborhoods. It's the same. There's a social synapse that happens between us. But what's going on is, I'm taking in information, growing. I'm taking in the narratives around me and eventually that imprints on me, like, this is who I am, but it's really not. It's who everyone else around me is, or some narrative that I've been given, and I don't know if that's my narrative. So realizing that everyone else is not, they're just subject to like where they're born and who raised them. And so I think once you can for me, once I worked as a ranch hand. And these guys, when I was out in Colorado, and these guys had all their Wranglers on, their stuff, and I was like, oh my God, I got nothing in common with these guys. And one night we went out for a beer, and this guy and I, Steve Lucky, started having this conversation. I was like, holy shit, we see things exactly the same. And my mind was blown because we look different. So you got to get beneath the veneer of how we're designed to see each other. My mind has been poisoned just to see race and gender. We need to get rid of it. So I kind of had that realization in maybe in a more experiential way. So I was like, wow, what's that person's story? And once you get into the story, like, holy shit, like Lewis is the guy who grew up in Camden. He was the only white guy in Camden, you know, and I remember parts of our stories and how you told me, I'm like, I would never picture Lewis kind of coming from this space to Lewis. So, you know, what you don't know about someone could just about fill the Grand Canyon. And so I learned earlier on just to start asking people about their stories and really tripping out on what was going on there.
Fascinating and a great model for people, no doubt. I don't want to leave out the monolithic press.
So I was like, wow, what's that person's story? And once you get into the story, like, holy shit, like
that is in front of us every day that leads people to sort of a one or two dimensional idea of who they are, Democratic, or so.
No, it is, and it's a shame. Really, it really is a shame. Everybody's so rich and vital, and when you understand, when you understand how that works, and I think the term you were talking about, there's so much information, is this infobesity, and we tend to put our brains, because our brains are harassed and they're troubled because this realness is in us and it's suppressed by this crap that comes in on us all the time. So when you start asking the question, like, why do I need to hate you? I'm not quite sure I get this. Why do I need to hate the guy that doesn't agree with me? Because they don't agree with you. You know, Gore Vidal said, it's not that we should be right, or I'm right, it's that you need to be wrong. That's the problem here, right? So Ruby Sales is a lesser known civil rights activist. And she said something to me that flipped the script absolutely, which was, she said we needed a redemptive theology, but what we do for the Road to Resilience is we want to give you a redemptive ideology. Where can I grow? Where can I plant myself and be refreshed? What ideas can I put in me that will refresh me and help me rejuvenate? So these people who are these white supremacists in these areas of this country, I'm going to go to the extreme, as their whiteness has been taken away from them because now we have more rights. You know, those rights are kind of shifting out, and as they get less rights, and now there's more people of color with more opportunities to those people, and they're moving up and ascending, and hopefully, supposedly in certain areas of our nation, they're diminished. Where are they going to refresh themselves? There's nothing. There's no redemptive ideology for them. Wow. The only person feeding them is Donald Trump, who feeds them hate and anger, and he fills them, right, I should hate you, or I should be fearful of you. And that's where our brain naturally goes. So that's why he succeeds. So anyway, so that's, you know, what we need to counterbalance what's coming in and start feeding out something more positive narratives here.
Beautiful. So you mentioned the Road to Resilience. I didn't know if you wanted to, the first 20 always fascinated me. I don't know if you want to talk about that real quick.
Well, so really the Road to Resilience is just a program from the first 20. They're just still the first 20. So I started the first 20. So I've been a firefighter for the better part of over 2 decades. I just retired. I'm 53. I retired like a couple years ago. And when I was working within the fire service, these folks had a lot of problems, neck up and neck down, and they were just like this subset of America. And I was like, you know what? That sucks. These folks, and I was working as a volunteer, and these folks who give so much are like suffering. There's no programs. So I was like, I don't know. Let me see if I can step in and fix this or help. And I think really in retrospect, I was trying to fix myself. Like I have all these broken, jangly pieces that don't go together. And how do I fix myself and make sense of what's going on inside of me? So I do think there was something in it, but the term comes from the idea that, you know, the first 20 minutes of a fire is the most important. It determines like, it's super chaotic. You can't see, it's super hot. You have tons of gear on. So originally we're like, how do we help somebody succeed in that first 20 minutes? And then it kind of manifested to, you know, a lot greater, which is now about how do we help you succeed in life? What kind of mindset that I can give you that'll drive you to make changes neck up and neck down? And it's been for me over a decade march to or search for that spot where I can plant that flag and say, this is the fertile ground to change right here. And that's where we're at, where we landed with the Road to Resilience, is hopefully we're digging in that space.
So what can people expect? Or do you want to walk through like the steps of the Road to Resilience? Or?
Sure. Well, it's really simple. Yeah. I mean, like it's, the idea is everything's a journey. Like you're never there. it sounds super cliched, life's about the journey, but it is. But it's where could I go to fill myself? Where is that redemptive ideology found? And for us, we dig into the idea of the spirit. So our spirituality is defined by is what leads us to greater meaning and purpose. And where we go for that meaning purpose is community. So that's our natural flow point, is to be in community. So it's not rooted in a theology, but I don't care what church or synagogue or mosque you're in. If you're real about it, when you step out that door, that's where it becomes real. So we talk about bringing that spirituality into the day to day. I need spirituality in the synagogues or the mosque or the yoga studio or my ashram. I need it in Walmart. You know, and that's the last place you expect it to be. So we call this place the spiritual frontier, where like the spirit meets the day to day. And making it real. So it's a very simple process that we bring, and it's about humanizing other people and seeing like, hey, Lewis, I see you. Recognizing other people and the humanity in other people. And it could be, hey, wave to someone. How are you? Understanding that the simplest way is, so we have a very specific pattern we teach. So when I work with first responders and military and police officers, we teach them this methodology: compassion, gratitude, and faith. So we live in this state of continuous community. To make it real, I have to show you I care about you. You start that flow. Lewis goes, oh, wow, Dave, that's really nice, Dave. You reflect in gratitude. And then when I'm like, hey, there's this unknown thing going on, you're like, hey, Dave, I got your back. So through faith, we step into the unknown together. So life's about this. We need to be together, and that's how we move forward, is together. We all rise together. So that's the road to resilience in a nutshell. We ramp it up and programatize it, but it's just about kindness and caring and humanization.
So help me out, where people come to you individually, or are you building this program to be implemented in different settings?
Yeah, more the latter. So basically, we had some big swings. So I work with the Air Force. I developed their program for the Air Force Fire Service. I work with the U.S. Forest Service, the City of Baltimore Police and Fire. Any fans of The Wire, who I know you're out there, I work with Baltimore Police, and they were driving me around to, like, I'm in the Western. Where's Bunny Colvin? So anyway, I got to work with Baltimore, City of Detroit, and Philly. So we want to make sure it worked, and now we're migrating out to everybody. So we just got a big grant from FEMA, and we're gonna, right now, the city of El Paso called me, which is kind of funny. Can you come down here and work with our citizens? I'm like, absolutely.
Wow.
So the idea is, how do we build that
back to the American immigrant?
Right? Because what's happening here? That's exactly what's happened here. My favorite thing to say is mucho gusto. Oh, mucho gusto. I love to meet you. Great to meet you too. So we're making the program bilingual, and the city of Juarez in Mexico, because they're sister cities, is like, hey, can you come here? I'm like, this is insane.
That's great.
So to be able to work with the Latinx population specifically, because they're also beset with a lot of physical and mental disease. So it's really, so our program links into fitness and wellness ideas that kind of help you out and make you better in those areas. So health, safety, and performance. So we're moving into that population. So hopefully we want to get this going in Philadelphia as well. But right now they called and I was like, yep, I'll go down there. So
yeah. That's amazing. It's full circle.
So, it really has.
Yeah,
well, this is full circle for me, Lowe's. I tell you what, like, even just hearing your conversation in the beginning, looking at the lineup, because I kind of want to reflect back a little bit.
Yeah.
That, I was thinking about how things endure. I'm like, you've been around. Fabian introduced you. You've been the guy pushing this thing, a lot of times uphill, and is missing a couple tires. You're like, no problem, I got it.
All the time uphill, bro.
All the time uphill. All the time. Even when we were together, it was uphill.
There was a point around Snarky Puppy's Grammy where I could see over the hill for a minute. And you know what was on the other side of it?
Another fucking hill. There was another hill called streaming.
So
Yeah.
yeah, well, people don't understand it's like the making sausage and how things work and seeing it. But I mean, I give you a lot of credit, and I think what's so special for me is to create something that hopefully is real. But when you pass the mantle, like what's the next person going to do, and to see it grow and blossom in other ways. So we created a space where people can come and express themselves, and now maybe culturally those expressions are a little different. The music sonically might sound, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
I liken it to the Ropeadope's like the Constitution. It's the true we the people spot where we constantly go and refresh ourselves. Like our spirituality can be greatly enhanced through the music we listen to all the time. And you know, I still have well, I don't know where it's around here, but I still have the Campbell Brothers I listen to. Can you feel it? Like that's my mandate.
Yeah.
So DJ Logic, you know, the Anomaly comes on top to bottom. My kid loves it. You know, talk about being fresh.
We're at like 600 records now.
That's insane. So, well, that's what I'm saying for me is like to get back to what the day's about is giving back to these people who really at the end of the day, whatever they're playing, like people, that's important for people. That's helping people. Anger and fear keep me rooted in my meat sack. I needed to rise above this thing. You know, and music is what's going to take me here and let me catch sight of these ideas, and you know, and free myself of these malevolent forces that keep me trapped here and that press me in. So I give you guys all the credit in the world. You are doing God's work.
It is fascinating the parallels and the things that you're saying. I mean, I don't remember exactly when it was, and you know, I'll say it live on air. It was kind of like a hippie moment at the top of the mountain. It's just like there's clouds and they look exactly like the ocean. Right. Connection makes everything work. Right. So now instead of putting out records, let's connect artists together. And it's really fascinating. I mean, we have monthly gatherings. We've had some things in this pandemic where people were like holed up in their house, negative on the whole world. They came to one of the Zoom meetings and saw the other artists and everybody's in the same boat. And they were like, "Oh, okay, man. I'm going to get back up. This is great." We had a great meeting around on Juneteenth. You know, Spirit of Ropeadope, where we just, I don't know, maybe there were 30, 40 people, Fabian, and basically we didn't even have to say it, but all the white folks just muted their mics, and all these cats told their stories of when they got pulled over, and it was really fascinating to me because I thought that musicians hanging out together would have shared those stories and would be seeing what's underneath more than the average guy on the street. But they hadn't heard a lot of the stories about being pulled over and being pulled out and a gun to the head and stuff like that. It was really cathartic and healing for the people just to be able to say them, you know?
Yeah, I can only imagine. Well, and to that point is, when you get together, you didn't solve anyone's problem. You didn't get rid of COVID.
No.
You know, you didn't just all of a sudden call edited and everybody's pockets filled with money. Like nobody's problems were solved that day, but everyone's spirits were lifted, I'm sure. And the idea to tell your story, make sure your story's heard, and somebody gets that, that's really a big deal. All we have at the end of the day is our stories. And we need other people to make sense of them, you know, in a kind of way, like, so I think that's super cool that you're providing that, and especially when you get to an artist, like these are people who are expressive, and I think they need it even more. You know,
the communication, they've been cut off. I noticed that early in the pandemic that it was hurtful to the artist to not have an audience.
Yeah,
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I knew financially you got to sell tickets to pay the bills, but it was like no. I need that energy. I need to see people responding to the music, not just to make the music. And so it's not isolated. We're isolated, but that's not, you know, our whole lives, right? And so
no,
I think we're making some progress and it's coming back. I
hope so. But I got to tell you I don't know where our time is. Do I have time for a quick story?
We do. Yeah, we've got 7 to 8 minutes, I think. Is that right?
So the quick story on one of my favorite Ropeadope stories is, and it's kind of funny in another way. So we got calls. I get emails, and there's this radio station in Philly called The Word, WURD. It's an all-black format, and they email me about, yo, we sold the shirts. This is super cool. The Stand Strong vibe. We're all about it. And I started emailing them. So my email is words at Ropeadope. We're going back and forth, and these folks thought I was black. So it was really funny. I walked go down to the studio, and it's a big glass door. So I remember, knock on the door, and there's these three dudes sitting at the table, and they look over at me, and they all go back to start talking again. They just don't even get up, right? Like this white guy's in the wrong spot. So, I'm like, okay, like knock, 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 and I see them have a conversation. Like, okay, you got to go answer. One guy shuffles over, is like, yo, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, man, it's Words from Ropeadope, and he goes, oh, hey, what's up, Words? Oh, comes in, and we bro up, and he introduced me to everybody around the table. So we go into we're going to do a live on-air conversation, and I'm on after Islam Today. So the guy from Islam Today's done. He's got his kufi on. He's done. He's kind of, we're in their studio. I'm like, hey, we off air? They're like, yeah. I'm like, can we be real for a second? They're like, yeah, sure. What's up? I'm like, you guys thought I was black, didn't you? And they're like, we totally thought you were black. We don't know any white guy named Words. So we all start laughing. I'm like, the funny thing is, I'm also Muslim. I converted when I married my wife. I'm like, Bismillah Bahan. Often the guy was like, what? The guy, Islam Today guy, was like, what? So we started having this impromptu conversation. We go on the air, and for the next hour, people were calling in about how we see each other and seeing each other different. So it was really, again, we didn't solve any problems, but we opened this dialogue. And again, Fabe and I were talking earlier before we started, like, hey, how does people still spot his shirt? And they have a conversation. So, it's partly the clothes, but it's also what we're bringing as ourselves, or the energy we're bringing into the spot, what Lewis is bringing, what Fabian is bringing, what everybody's bringing into this spot. But we had this conversation about how to see each other different. And I always go back to that in my head. People are calling in from West Philly, North Philly. These weren't people from the suburbs. These are people with real problems that I didn't understand. And we were having this really cool conversation about how do we make it different. Again, that was 20 years ago. Still the same problems, but I was really hopeful. If I go back to that, it was just such a positive moment where we all dropped who we were for a second, and that we were all just people. And that's Ropeadope. We just get this safe spot to have these conversations.
Well, it's great to talk to you today about these things and hear your positive energy about it, because honestly, with COVID and with the socio-political scene and with social media complicating things, with people kind of jumping on and being aggravated in the comments and saying things that aren't true in order to just manipulate your mood. Like people are doing that to see if they could just plant the seeds of discontent across the internet. I really have become kind of locked up,
Yeah.
Like I see no mask. I see a pickup truck. I see a flag that's not a traditional American flag. I'm not going to even say the name of it. And I'm just, it's like Transformers, like boom, 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 3 levels of armor just close up around me. It's like lock.
Phases are not on stun. Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other day. I think it's like sort of like it's like a social obligation as a human that when you see another human, you should put your best smile. It's a Buddhist thing. Like it's a lotus flower. A smile is a lotus flower. Like you're giving a gift to somebody when you smile at them. I've stopped doing that, and I need to come back around and recognize the humanity of this.
It's hard, man. It's really hard, and it's we can get there, but we do it together, and then there's little baby steps and starting conversations about where we agree and where we're together versus not. But I'm going to start where I kind of am, where I started, which is it's the music. That's where we got into music. It's like how we define ourselves, and I think that plays such an important role. That's a lot of times overlooked, and how a great concert can bring people together. It becomes I hear people talk about life-changing moments. They're always around music. In my day, like it's always around music. It used to be around a Dead show.
Right.
But oh my God, sometimes the lights all shine on me. Sometimes I can barely see. So, I'm going pop on the Grateful Dead here for a second. But my point is, it's it's these ups and downs, but we're going to get out the other side because of us. And remember, like, there's 3 million more people who voted in the last election that were on the right side of things, and there's a whole lot of people who didn't vote. So we're gonna turn it around, but you can get rid of Jim Crow laws, but you can't get rid of Jim Crow thinking until we start moving into these spaces, these spiritual frontiers with a redemptive ideology. So, forget about us, just for everybody, just a little dose of kindness, a hello, understanding we're all suffering, and the stories and these folks who fly those stupid flags and have these hateful thoughts, that's not who they are. That is not who they are. If they were bleeding profusely, you'd see the damage to them, but the damage comes in other ways to their psyche by getting misinformation. I constantly tell my kids, nobody ever grow up saying they want to be an asshole. No one ever said that, except maybe the president. No, so for understanding that most people, that's what's going on, they had some misinformation or it took them to this spot. We got to find that compassion to disengage and just help humanize people we see. So
I hear you.
I'm Dave Wurtzel, and I approve this message. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And and stop being shocked and outraged and process and understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's hard, Louis.
Thank you. Is there any call to action for people who are watching? Anywhere you want people to go?
Yeah, I want you to go home and give somebody a hug. Go out today and everybody say hi. Really, it's not about us. I want you to go out and say hi to one more person you didn't say. Okay, 5 different people you see that you wouldn't say hi to. Go, you know what? I'm going to say hi to this person. That's what you should do. That's what I want everyone to do on this call after they get off. After 7 o'clock tonight.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
David, great to chat with you. Thank you so
too,
much.
Louis.
Appreciate you.
All right. Love you guys. Love you, Louis. Thanks, brother.
So we are still here. I assume we're still live. This is new for us. We're working with Launch Global, and I think we're like a minute or two.
We're live.
Get an echo on that. So, Mr. Brown, there's a little surprise coming from Dusky.
I love it. Before we get into that surprise, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. We're watching the Ropeadope Music and Arts Festival here. This is a 2-day series. We're watching day 1. We just heard from, listen, an amazing backdrop and story from David Wurtzel, the creator and founder of the Ropeadope apparel line. And I just want to encourage everyone, like David had mentioned, go out and, introduce yourself to somebody that you may not normally have introduced yourself to. Louis, just to kind of touch on that, first of all, thanks for getting him in the room. That was literally so much more than I thought it was going to be. To hear his experiences and what really goes into a clothing brand, the ideology, I can listen to him talk for another.
Yeah, this wasn't just commerce, right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You have no idea. But yeah,
I want to announce a couple quick things, not to interrupt you, but I just want to point out that we're coming up, and we don't have a lot of time. There's a lot of material coming up here with performances from different people. But tomorrow, starting tonight, 3 a.m. East Coast time, midnight Pacific time, begins the next Bandcamp day. And if you're not familiar, Bandcamp has been waiving their fees with artists. And we, as a label, have done extremely well, and therefore the artists with whom we share all the revenue have done well in the last 2 quarters through these Bandcamp days. In fact, we just got numbers in that in the last month, it's almost half of the label's entire revenue. So I want to urge people to go to Bandcamp overnight. We'll have some special things that are going to be announced. You're going to see things pop up. Pay attention to ropeadope.bandcamp.com. Dusky from Wales will have a surprise EP. We'll also have some new vinyl pre-orders from Johanna Bernhardt and a special early opening of one of her tracks. She's performing tomorrow, I believe. Wonderful stuff. And then look for the little surprises, and because we got some things that I just can't say yet.
Love it. Well, coming up next, we have a special video from Sasha Masakowski with her song entitled Entropy. And you can support Sasha at sasha-masakowski.bandcamp.com. So I'm going to head it back over to the guys over at Launch to cue up that video.
Love Sasha.